Welcome to episode 40 of the Growing Space podcast. You guys, I can't believe that this is episode 40 of the Growing Space podcast, to be totally honest. I am almost to the 1 year mark in just a couple of weeks. Once I get to episode 52, that means I will have officially been a podcaster for a year. So thank you all for tuning in today. And for those of you who tune in every week, I just want you to know how much I appreciate you and sharing this fun little journey with me becoming a podcaster. So today we are going to pick up with our Meet the Plant Family mini series. This is something that I have been doing throughout the year. So I started back in the spring. We did a whole bunch of episodes on different plant families with edible plants that grow in the springtime and in the fall. We took a little break from that, and then I shared 2 other episodes for the Solanaceae plant family and the Cucurbitaceae plant family, 2 of the most common and most dominant plant families in the summer seasons. And for those of you who are brand new to listening to this podcast, first of all, welcome. Thanks for being here. I would encourage you to go back and listen to some of those previous episodes if you enjoyed this week's episode. I also wanted to share that I am located in the USDA Hardiness Zone 8A. So I am in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we are fortunate enough to be able to grow food all year round here. And right now we are in the throes of our summer growing season. So everything is thriving. Everything is growing, which is wonderful. Also, happy official start of the summer season. So last week we welcomed the summer solstice with open arms. So we are now, instead of working towards longer days, we are working towards shorter days. I know, because we're going from the summer solstice, inching our way closer to the winter solstice now. Back to the episode. Today, we are going to be talking about 3 different plant families. The previous episodes that we've done on the plant families have just been one plant family. So this is a little bit different than those previous episodes. But the reason why I wanted to combine these 3 plant families into one episode is because we're fairly familiar with members of these plant families, but these plant families don't have a whole lot of common edible plants, or at least not popular edible plants. Popular common edible plants. So I decided, why not smush them all together into one super episode for you. And so that's what I have in store for you today. We are going to discuss the edible members of the Malvaceae plant family, the Convolvulaceae plant family, and the Zingiberaceae plant family. Lots of Latin. But we're going to do this together. We're going to step through and talk about each one of these plant families, those edible members, different things to keep in mind as you are growing these edible plants in your growing space. So again, thanks for being here, and let's go ahead and get started talking about these 3 summer plant families. Welcome to the Growing Space podcast. I'm your host, Farmer Erin, owner of The Patio Farmer, and I believe that no matter what size space you have, you can grow food at home. Tune in every Tuesday as I share my best tips, tricks, and encouragement for tending to homegrown edible plants. I'm here to support your food growing journey. The Growing Space podcast is sponsored by Plant Club by The Patio Farmer. Plant Club by The Patio Farmer is a monthly subscription service I started in 2020. It's a membership-based opportunity to take your growing journey to the next level. With 4 different membership options, you get to decide the amount and kind of support that's right for you. All Plant Club members receive access to my online community through a platform called Circle. Having access to this platform allows members to share pictures, ask questions, celebrate harvests, and get to know each other. All Plant Club members also have access to free seeds each month, along with information on how to plant and tend to their crops, with seeding instructions and downloadable resources from the Patio Farmers Resource Library. Membership starts at just $14 a month. Join Plant Club today by visiting my website, thepatiofarmer.com/membership. So we are first going to talk about the Malvaceae plant family. Now, this plant family is also known as the mallow plant family. It's a fairly decently sized plant family, if I do say so myself. There's over 4,000 species of this. There's over 4,000 species within this plant family, and there's a lot of shrubs and trees that are in this plant family. One of the characteristics of the Malvaceae plant family is that they have a 5-petaled flower with a fused bract within the flower. And members of this plant family can be grown as natural sources of fiber. You can eat several members of this plant family, hence why we're doing the episode. And there are lots of ornamental members of this plant family. The most commonly known, or I would say the most commonly cultivated member of this plant family that we get to eat is okra. Yeah. So we're going to talk about okra today. Hibiscus is also a member of the Malvaceae plant family. So is cacao. Yeah. And cola, like if you've heard of the cola nut, that's a member of the Malvaceae plant family. Cotton. Yeah. Cotton is a member of the Malvaceae plant family. So is durian and hollyhock, linden, marshmallow, the herb marshmallow. It's a great medicinal herb. Or definitely look into marshmallow. Marshmallow, the plant, not the confection, right? Not the sugary confection. But these are all members of the Malvaceae plant family. Now, something else about the Malvaceae plant family, and I mentioned okra at the top of that list, and I know okra can be one of those kind of isolating vegetables that either you love okra or you hate okra. I love okra. Oh my gosh. Now, I do something really weird with my okra, maybe you don't find this weird, or maybe I'm about to share this with you and you're like, "Ew, that's disgusting." Whatever. Don't knock it until you try it. I love eating okra straight off the plant, raw. Oh my gosh, it is so good. It's such a great snack. Now, members of the Malvaceae plant family are known to have a mucilaginous texture to them, to their stems, to their leaves. Yes, mucilaginous, as in mucousy or slimy a little bit. Yeah, which, this texture is often what is off-putting about okra to many people. Like that's usually where they get hung up, is with the mucilaginous texture of okra. But there are ways that you can get around that. I mean, pickling okra is a fantastic way of enjoying the little pods. You can also roast okra. You can use it as a thickener in soups. So you can add okra to get a nice, thick, rich broth from a soup or a stew. Yeah, but I mean, in my opinion, okra is like a must. I have to have okra in my growing space. I actually just seeded some probably about a month ago now, and it's coming up. It's looking great. I'm really excited. Focusing on okra and maybe hibiscus too. I can touch a little bit on hibiscus, but the other ones, cotton, of course, grows in the U.S., grows in the South prolifically, but it's not, cotton's not an edible, obviously, it's a fiber. So maybe not spending a whole lot of time talking about cotton, although understanding that it is related to okra, I think is pretty neat. But maybe we just focus our time today on discussing okra, how it likes to grow, and again, touching just a smidge on hibiscus. And why don't we just go ahead and start with hibiscus? When we grow hibiscus, we are growing the plant for its flowers, and there's lots of delicious things that you can make with hibiscus flowers. You can make hibiscus tea. You can make all sorts of sweet treats with hibiscus. Hibiscus is a perennial plant, so the same plant returns year after year to produce flowers and to produce for you. So that is something to keep in mind if you are considering adding hibiscus. And hibiscus is just offers such a stunning display in the summertime when it opens up and has those massive flowers with that deep center. And they're such a fun plant and definitely helps bring more of a tropical feel, more of a beachy feel in your summer growing space even if you don't live at the beach. So, and there's so many different things that you can do with hibiscus flowers. Now, okra, on the other hand, is an annual. So this is a reseeding annual here in our climate. So the okra plants will grow for 3 to 4 months generally, producing, usually after about a month and a half or 2 months of growth. And as a reseeding annual, they grow pretty quickly. So once they're established, their goal is to hurry up and produce all of the seeds, all of the pods, all of the fruit as quickly as possible, because they know that their time, they're not a perennial, so they know that they have a more limited time to grow. So some things to keep in mind when you are planting okra in your growing space. So generally, or most varieties of okra are going to grow fairly tall, fairly large plants. And when I say tall and large, I mean every single bit of those words. Most okra varieties you can expect to get at least 6 feet tall. Of course, after about 3 months of growing, some okra varieties even get taller, maybe close to 12 feet. Yeah. So they get nice and tall, and they have really broad leaves that like to grow all along the plant. And so they really take up a lot of space. You just want to keep that in mind as you are thinking about planting okra or growing okra. You want to give it a space that is fairly large. You want to make sure that you're planting your plants, one plant every 2 feet at a minimum, to just ensure that they will have all the space that they need to grow. You can grow okra directly in the ground. It grows beautifully. It's well suited for a variety of different soil types and soil textures. Here in Charlotte, we are known for our deep, dense Carolina clay, and okra is able to just dig and tunnel its way through the clay and grows beautifully in our native soil. You can also grow okra in a raised bed. So I have mine planted in my raised bed. I also have several clients who have okra in their raised beds, and it can grow beautifully in a raised bed setting as well. One thing to call out if you are going to be growing okra in a raised bed is the raised nature of your bed. So instead of growing directly in the ground, you may be elevating your plants by 1 foot to 1.5 feet, depending on how deep your raised beds are. And when you do that, you're adding another 1 foot, 1.5 feet, however deep they are, of height to your plants. So just keep that in mind. I will also share that there are some varieties of okra that are dwarf varieties. I've grown several of these in the past. One of my favorite dwarf varieties is one called Cajun Jewel. And usually I get that either from Seed Savers Exchange or Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. So it's a little bit more difficult to track that variety down. Most of what you'll find, or the most common okra varieties you'll find, are Clemson Spineless or Burgundy. But there's tons of different varieties out there. In fact, there's this guy in Western North Carolina. He's done so much okra research. He's written a whole book on okra, and he is committed to saving and popularizing and celebrating all the different kinds of okra. His name is Chris Smith, and I will put some information in the show notes for you today. I'll include his book all about okra. It's called The Whole Okra, and some other information about some of the projects and work that he does, again, in Western North Carolina. But one of the main organizations he leads is the Utopian Seed Project, which does a lot of seed saving and storytelling around different heirloom varieties of seeds. So he's definitely a cool guy. You should if you're interested in unique seeds or just okra or both, maybe you should definitely check him out. He's got a lot of very valuable knowledge and information that he shares. Okra gets really, really tall. You can grow it in a container or a pot as well, but just keep in mind that height. You want to counterbalance that height with weight, right? So you don't have okra plants toppling over in your containers mid-season. But if you choose a large container that you can fill with a lot of soil that's going to provide you with a lot of weight in the bottom of your container to help stabilize your plants and their growth throughout the growing season, then you will be just fine. So the okra plant, when it is getting ready to produce okra pods, produces bright white flowers with deep pink centers. They look very similar to hibiscus. And actually, when I found out that hibiscus and okra were related, I thought to myself, yep, that makes sense. So the flowers of the okra plant look very similar to hibiscus. They're beautiful, stunning. The bees love them, and I love watching the bees love them. One thing that I have to call out when you are harvesting your okra. So okra leaves and the whole okra plant really is covered in these little tiny hairs. And there's also like some kind of sap or sugary somethingness that is on the plant as well. When you are harvesting okra, I would suggest that you try to interact with the plant itself as little as possible. And maybe you wear gloves or long sleeves, because those little hairs that are in the okra like to irritate your skin, and then that sap or those enzymes that coat the plant can get into, or those little spots where the spikes have gotten into your skin, and it can just be really uncomfortable. Let's just say that. Really uncomfortable and really itchy. So keep that in mind when you are harvesting your okra. I usually like to go in and I'll just hold the pod itself, trying not to touch any other part of the plant, and then use my shears, my harvest snips or my shears to cut the pods from the plant and then collect them that way. There are other people, and I've tried this when I was the farm manager at an urban farm here in Charlotte. I tried maintaining my okra like this. But there are some people who will actually defoliate the plant as it's growing. So okra plants apparently don't need their leaves to produce pods. It's kind of crazy. I mean, to think about, but like once the plant starts to produce pods, you can strip it almost entirely of all of its leaves. And that can improve your experience as the harvester if you find that you are really sensitive to those skin irritants that are on the plant. You can try defoliating your okra plants. And it does look kind of odd, all of these okra plants with no leaves on them, but again, it's an option for you if that makes harvesting okra more pleasurable. That is the Malvaceae plant family and some of the most common edible varieties within that plant family. Okra, of course, being the dominant one. Before we jump, let me talk about marshmallow. So marshmallow is a medicinal herb. It is perennial as well. So like the hibiscus, it will return year after year. The plant itself can get pretty tall, up to 6 feet tall after a couple of years. It is actually native to Eastern Europe and Northern Africa, and it produces these pinkish gray flowers, which are really pretty. And you can harvest the roots of the marshmallow plant. So that is the roots of the marshmallow plant are the main parts of the plant that are ingested. Marshmallow is less of a culinary plant and much more of a medicinal plant. Well, I say that, but marshmallows, like the sugary confection, used to be made from marshmallow root. So they're not anymore, but they used to be made from marshmallow root. Marshmallow root, from a medicinal perspective, has many benefits. It's a great thing to use for digestion, for aiding in digestion. It can reduce inflammation and irritation. in your digestive system. It's also great for your urinary tract, your skin, wounds even. It has antibacterial properties in it. You can even use it for like hair, so your hair health. It is a great moisturizer and can help nourish your hair. And then heart health as well, or increasing your good cholesterol levels, reduce your risk of heart disease. Yeah, so there's lots of different benefits, medicinal benefits for ingesting marshmallow root if you are interested. So yeah, the Malvaceae plant family. Maybe you will invite some of these members into your growing space this season or next season. All right, so the next plant family that we're going to talk about in today's episode is the Convolvulaceae plant family. So the Convolvulaceae plant family is also known as the morning glory plant family or the bindweed plant family. So bindweed is something that is not super pleasant to deal with, at least from my perspective. The morning glory family is known for their vines and growing close to the ground. It's a fairly small plant family, so there's only about 1,600 species within this plant family. And the most common edible member of this plant family is the sweet potato. Yeah. So, given that this episode is being shared in the month of June, June is a beautiful time of year to be planting your sweet potatoes. So, the part of the plant, obviously, that we eat from the sweet potato are the tubers, the roots, the swollen root system of the sweet potato vine. But the sweet potato vine itself grows very similarly to morning glory. So, if you have seen the flowering plant morning glory before, then you'll kind of have in your mind how it likes to grow. So, it grows in really thin vines that are typically grow close to the ground, although morning glories can climb up different structures. And then there's this beautiful flower that opens up. And typically morning glories, the actual plant morning glories, are grown for their flowers and for attracting pollinators. I personally have a little bit of a beef with the morning glory vines themselves. I'm not speaking about sweet potatoes, but I'm speaking about morning glories. Anytime a client of mine is like, or mentions that they want to sow morning glories, I'm like, oh, are you sure? Because these little plants are known to be super fertile. And because they're vining, they like to wrap around things and get a little crazy, get a little wild. Luckily, sweet potato vines, they do get pretty long. They do get kind of wild, but they don't take over a space like other members of the morning glory family do. So when we cultivate sweet potatoes at home, we plant the sweet potato slips, which are essentially sprouted greens that come off of a tuber or off of a sweet potato that has been soaking in water to kind of introduce this growth and these green vines to start growing from the tuber itself. So that is typically what we use to plant sweet potatoes. We allow those slips to start growing some root hairs, and then we pop them in some nice fertile soil. Sweet potatoes are commonly cultivated here in the Southeast and in North Carolina, where I am. Actually, fun fact for all of the fellow North Carolinians listening to this episode, the sweet potato pie is our state dessert. Yeah. So we grow lots and lots of sweet potatoes here. The sweet potatoes love our Carolina clay. So if you have an in-ground space to grow some sweet potatoes, I would definitely recommend putting them in there. The one thing to keep in mind about planting root vegetables in the clay is the harvesting process. So if you want a little easier of a go at harvesting your sweet potatoes, then maybe you consider putting them in a raised bed. I've even grown sweet potatoes in pots before, or like large grow bags. So, just like the okra, they can grow in any of those different kinds of conditions, either directly in the ground in a raised bed or in a large container or grow bag. Sweet potatoes, they like to grow all summer long. So you'll usually plant them in June and then harvest them maybe the end of September. The way that you know your sweet potatoes are ready to harvest is you look for the flowers. So the flowers, they're pretty stunning. They're a light purple on the outside, and then towards the center, they turn like this deep purpley color. And they look just like morning glory flowers. But once you see your plant flower, then you want to give maybe another week, a week or two, and then you can start digging up your sweet potato tubers. The ability to like dig around in the soil and uncover these massive tubers is just so exciting. Now, the way that the sweet potato tubers grow is they grow in long chains. So once you find a chain with some roots on it, be sure you follow it. And there's almost like, these swollen points within the root systems. That is the sweet potato that we eat, are these big swollen parts. But if you follow those roots throughout the soil, it'll lead you to other tubers to harvest. Sweet potatoes are fairly disease and pest resistant, which makes them great additions to our summer growing space. And another fun fact for you is that you can eat sweet potato greens. This is actually a common staple in a lot of diets around the world is sweet potato leaves, and they're delicious. They're kind of nutty, and they're tender. If you take the very ends, the very tips of the plant's leaves, it won't hurt, the plant. It won't keep your plants from developing those big, strong root systems, of course, that we love. But yeah, it's a fun midsummer green if you're a green fiend like I am. I can never get enough greens. Yeah, maybe try sweet potato greens as another kind of bonus harvest to your sweet potato plant. Okay, so the third plant family that we're talking about today is the Zingiberaceae plant family. This is also known as the ginger family. Yes, and there are about 1,300 species within this plant family. This is a family of flowering plants, and most of them feature root systems that are actually rhizomes, which are technically underground stems. This will be a shocker, but the two most common edible plants of this plant family are ginger, I know, and turmeric. So for where I am in Charlotte, these are considered annual plants. We grow them for a season, harvest their roots, and then plant them again in the following year. But ginger and turmeric love the heat. They love our hot, humid summers, and they actually prefer a little bit of shade. So if you have a more shady spot that gets plenty of heat throughout the summer season, then ginger and turmeric would grow beautifully for you there. I have grown ginger and turmeric in the ground. I have grown it in raised beds, and I have grown it in pots and containers. So again, you have a lot of flexibility in terms of where you plant your ginger and your turmeric. So the biggest thing to keep in mind when you are planting ginger and turmeric is that these rhizomes like a well-draining soil. They don't like to have their feet wet. So if you feel like your in-ground soil might hold a little bit too much moisture for these plants, then choosing a well-draining potting soil or potting mix can be really helpful. Ginger, as opposed to turmeric, ginger likes to be hilled. Or kind of like, you can do this with your potatoes as well, but it likes to be buried. It likes to have its rhizomes buried slightly. So if you are growing them in a raised bed or in a container, just make sure that you have enough depth to be able to hill your ginger as they grow. Ginger and turmeric will flower if you let them, but when they flower, they're pulling up energy from their roots or from their rhizomes to produce those gorgeous flowers, which means that your harvest could be a little smaller. So ginger and turmeric, these are great to be planting. You plant these from cured rhizomes. So you need seed ginger or seed turmeric, and you plant these right at the beginning of summer or just before. Sometime in the month of June is great to plant your ginger and turmeric. And both of these will take a few months to really develop strong roots and rhizomes to be able to harvest. Mary Roberts, who was my guest in last week's episode, specializes in cultivating ginger and turmeric at home. So I have some resources that I will link in today's show notes from Mary that you, if you're interested in growing your own ginger and turmeric, be sure to check those out. She's a fantastic resource and is known pretty widely, maybe even nationally, for her ginger and turmeric cultivation. She's also certified organic, which is really special. All right. Well, that wraps up the 3 different plant families: the Malvaceae plant family, the Convolvulaceae plant family, and the Zingiberaceae plant family. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. In next week's episode, I have something exciting to share with you all. It's going to be all about summer harvesting. And I've written this summer harvest guide that I'm excited to share out into the world, but it basically walks you through the different things to keep in mind as you are harvesting all of your delicious summer veggies that are coming out of your growing space. So I have written up that guide, and then next week's episode will feature a lot of the content. I'll kind of go through that and share that with you all, and then have that available for you as well. So next week is going to be all about harvesting your summer veggies, how to do it, how to know when they're ready to be harvested, and how to handle and store them once you've harvested them. And if you have listened to this podcast in the past, then you'll know that at the end of every episode, I like to share a fun little tidbit, fun little morsel of information with you as a send off. And in today's send off, I am sharing, I'm announcing that little teaser that I gave you last week. If you listened to last week's episode, about a fun new summer project that I'm taking on. So, and this went live last week, although there's still plenty of time to get in on all of the fun. But this summer season, so from the end of June through the end of September, that is the entire summer season here in the Northern Hemisphere. So I'm going to be hosting the Patio Farmers Summer Diaries. Really excited. So this is going to be hosted in my online community through Circle, which is also where a lot of my plant club resources and content live as well. But the summer diaries are going to be me sharing videos and written content from my own growing space and what I'm working on. So every Monday morning, I'm going to record and share a video tour that I will take all of the subscribers on of my growing space. I'll give you updates on what's growing, what's thriving, what's not, and the different things that I'm working on. And then there will also be a short kind of blog post or diary entry, if you will, to accompany the video. So this combines several things that I've been wanting to do for quite some time. I've been wanting to share more of my growing space with all of my clients and listeners, subscribers. I've also wanted to have the opportunity to write a little bit more and record more video. So I am really excited about the Summer Diaries special content series, and you can join in and watch the videos each week. You can read the blog posts each week as well. I am just asking for a one-time fee of $15. I feel like that's very reasonable. So $15 one time will unlock all of this extra content for you. And I will put a link to that in the show notes if you feel so inclined to join in on all of that fun. All right, y'all. Well, happy official start of the summer season. I hope everything is growing and thriving in your space. And I will see you again next week. Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode of the Growing Space Podcast. I hope that you learned something new and that you were able to take this new information home with you and implement into your growing journey and into your growing space. As always, I am here to support you in your food growing journey. If you'd like to learn more about the different services and resources and membership programs that I run through The Patio Farmer, please check out my website, thepatiofarmer.com. You can also follow me on social media. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and oh my gosh, most recently, TikTok. Wow. I know. Here I am. Patio Farmer is on TikTok. It's very exciting. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give it a like or a rating or a review if you want. Maybe share a little comment about your favorite part of the episode. Share it with a friend. The more interactions I get with my little podcast online, the more I'm able to help people just like you in their food growing journeys. As always, thanks for being here, and I will see you again next week.